It's easy to think about democracy as this, like, fixed thing, a set of rules written down somewhere. But the truth is, democracy is a journey, a constant work in progress. And nowhere is that clearer than in the history of Germany. We're taking inspiration from a fascinating quiz that was recently given to a lot of Germans, asking them about important moments in their country's journey towards democracy. And the results, well, they were a bit surprising, showing that some people don't know much about the long and often difficult fight for freedom and representation in Germany. So get ready, because we're about to take a quick trip through German history, from the early struggles for a united and democratic nation to the challenges and victories of more recent times. We'll look at the events, the people, and the ideas that have shaped Germany's experiment with democracy. And hey, maybe you can even play along and see how well you know your German history. You might even learn something new about democracy itself. Let's get started. Right, let's begin with something that seems simple but gets surprisingly complicated: the colors of the German flag. Black, red, and gold. You see them everywhere in Germany, but have you ever stopped to think about where they came from? It turns out most Germans haven't either. The most common theory, and the one that's actually closest to the truth, connects these colors back to a rather unexpected source: the uniforms of the Lutzauer Jäger, a volunteer army that fought against Napoleon in the early 1800s. We're talking black coats, dyed because black fabric was cheaper, red cuffs and shiny gold buttons. A fashion statement for freedom, you might say. Now, these colors didn't just stay on the battlefield, they were adopted by student groups who, let's be honest, love a good uniform, and became a powerful symbol during the revolutions of 1848, representing a desire for democracy and a united German nation. It's amazing how colors can become so meaningful, right? Here's the surprising thing, though. Only 1 in 8 Germans in that quiz knew this origin story. That means a lot of people are walking around with a powerful symbol on their shirts and flags without knowing the full story behind it. So we've got our colors, black, red and gold, now flying high as symbols of a unified democratic Germany. But where do you even start to build a nation, especially one as divided and politically complex as Germany was in the mid-19th century? Well, you need a meeting place, a stage for big ideas and even bigger debates. And that's where the Paulskirche in Frankfurt comes in. In 1848, amidst a wave of revolutions across Europe, the very first German National Assembly met in this church. Can you imagine the energy, the passion, the sheer hope in that room? These weren't just politicians in stuffy suits, they were writers, professors, lawyers, all united by a common goal: a constitution for a free and united Germany. This was a hugely important moment, a bold experiment in democracy. The delegates wrote a constitution, one that included basic rights, a parliament, and even a hereditary emperor to share power. It felt, for a brief, shining moment, like a new Germany was within reach. But here's where the story takes a turn, one that sadly happens again and again throughout history. The people in power, the monarchs and their allies, weren't so keen on sharing power. The revolution was crushed, the constitution shelved, and the dream of a unified democratic Germany was put on hold. The 1848 revolution aimed for a unified democratic Germany. But Otto von Bismarck had other plans. In 1871, he unified Germany through force. The new empire wasn't democratic. Bismarck centralized power, delaying democracy. All right, let's talk about a group that's been historically excluded from positions of power. Not just in Germany, but let's be real, pretty much everywhere: women. For a long time, the idea of women having a say in government, absolutely outrageous, according to some. But here's the thing about progress: it's persistent. All over the world, women were organizing, protesting, and demanding their rightful place at the decision-making table. And Germany was no exception. Women like Clara Zetkin, a passionate socialist leader, dedicated their lives to fighting for women's right to vote, and their efforts weren't wasted. In 1918, amidst the chaos of World War I and the collapse of the German Empire, Women's suffrage was finally made law. Think about that, a world war, a complete societal upheaval, and boom, women get the vote. It makes you wonder what else could be achieved during times of such profound change. But here's the thing about historical milestones. Sometimes we forget the details. It's easy to take for granted the rights we have today. Case in point. Only 18% of Germans surveyed knew the exact year women gained the right to vote. So let's give credit where credit is due. 1918, the year German women earned their rightful place in the political sphere. So Germany's a brand new republic, figuring things out after the mess of World War I. They've got a shiny new constitution, women can vote, things are looking up, right? Well, as we'll see, history has a way of throwing curveballs, but before we get to the drama, we need to talk about the man given the job of leading this fledgling democracy, Friedrich Ebert. Ebert's name might sound familiar. You've probably walked down a street named after him or heard of the Friedrich Ebert Foundation, but how well do you really know the man? Turns out, not that well. Only 33% of Germans knew that Ebert, a member of the Social Democratic Party, was elected as the first president of the Weimar Republic in 1919. Imagine the pressure on this guy's shoulders, a nation devastated by war, an economy in ruins, and the very idea of democracy still fragile and untested. Ebert's task was monumental: to rebuild Germany, establish a functioning democracy, and heal the wounds of a divided nation. So no pressure, right? Unfortunately for Ebert and for Germany, things were about to get a whole lot more complicated. Extremists, both on the left and the right, threatened to tear the young republic apart. The seeds of future turmoil were already being sown. But that, my friends, is a story for another time. All right, let's talk about January 30th, 1933, a date permanently etched into the history of the 20th century. It marked the day Adolf Hitler, leader of the Nazi Party, was made Chancellor of Germany. Now, you might be thinking, appointed, shouldn't it have been an election? And that's a very good question. See, Germany at this point was a cauldron of political instability, still recovering from the aftermath of World War I and facing severe economic hardship. The Nazi Party, while gaining popularity through their nationalist rhetoric and promises of stability, hadn't actually won a majority in the Reichstag, the German parliament. However, conservative politicians, underestimating Hitler's true intentions, believed they could control him, use his rising popularity to their advantage while keeping him in check. They thought they could harness the wave of support he generated. Oh boy, were they wrong. Within weeks of his appointment, Hitler, using a combination of political maneuvering, intimidation tactics, and the exploitation of a suspicious fire at the Reichstag building, consolidated his power, dismantling democratic institutions and establishing a totalitarian dictatorship. The story of Nazi Germany is often told in broad strokes. The rise of Hitler, the horrors of the Holocaust, the devastation of World War II. It's easy, in the face of such immense tragedy, to overlook individual stories, acts of incredible courage that flickered in the face of overwhelming darkness. One such story is that of Georg Elser, a carpenter and cabinet maker who stands as a stark reminder that even amidst the suffocating grip of a totalitarian regime, individual acts of defiance were possible. Elsa, deeply troubled by the Nazis' policies and recognizing the grave threat Hitler posed to humanity, decided to take action entirely on his own. In 1939, Elsa planted a bomb inside the Bürgerbraukeller, a beer hall in Munich where Hitler was scheduled to give a speech. He spent months meticulously planning, even living near the beer hall, to secretly carve out a hiding space for the explosive device within a pillar. He was a one-man resistance movement. Tragically, fate, as it so often does, intervened. Hitler finished his speech earlier than expected and left the hall just minutes before the bomb detonated. Elsa's plan, a testament to his courage and conviction, ultimately failed. He was captured, imprisoned, and later executed just weeks before the end of the war. The year is 1949. World War II has ended. Germany lay in ruins, grappling with devastation. Amidst the rubble, hope emerged. On May 23, 1949, West Germany was established. A new nation founded on democracy and freedom. Konrad Adenauer became the first chancellor. The road ahead was daunting, but the journey to redefine their nation began. After World War II, Germany was divided. The GDR, under Soviet influence, faced economic hardship. On June 17, 1953, protests erupted, demanding better conditions and freedom. The GDR, backed by Soviet tanks, crushed the uprising. Thousands were arrested, and many were imprisoned or deported. The uprising exposed the GDR's fragility and the people's desire for democracy. Now, let's fast forward to 1989. The Cold War was ending and Gorbachev's reforms were slow to reach East Germany. Honecker's regime clung to power, ignoring the change sweeping Eastern Europe. The GDR was a pressure cooker waiting to explode. Decades of stagnation and repression fueled discontent. This discontent found its voice in Leipzig. Citizens held peaceful demonstrations after prayers at St. Nicholas Church. They chanted, "Wir sind das Volk," "We are the people." This slogan demanded recognition and representation. The demonstration spread across the GDR. The world watched as citizens challenged their government. Pressure on Honecker's regime mounted. The Berlin Wall stood as a symbol of division. On November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. East Germans poured through the newly opened border. The fall of the Berlin Wall was a watershed moment. It marked the end of the Cold War and the beginning of German reunification. So, picture this. It's 1991, Germany is newly reunified, and Chancellor Helmut Kohl, the man who helped make it happen, is on a visit to Halle in the former East Germany. You'd think he'd be met with cheers and gratitude, right? Well, not exactly. Instead, Kohl is met with a barrage of eggs. Yep, eggs. People were unhappy with the economic struggles and uncertainties that followed reunification, and they saw Kohl as a symbol of those struggles. The image of him, visibly flustered, trying to shield himself from flying eggs, became iconic. This event, now known as the Healy Egg Throw, wasn't just about eggs, though. It highlighted the challenges and tensions of reunification, the frustration felt by many in the former East, and the limits of even a popular leader's ability to control the narrative when people are unhappy. It's a reminder that even in a democracy, especially a newly unified one, building trust and addressing inequalities takes time, effort, and a willingness to listen to the concerns of all citizens. And maybe, just maybe, it's also a reminder to politicians that sometimes you just have to take your lumps, or in this case your eggs, and keep on working towards a better future. Okay, let's talk about a darker side of German history, one that persisted long after the fall of the Nazi regime. It's about paragraph 175, a section of the German Penal Code that criminalized sexual relations between men. You see, this law, which dated back to 1871, wasn't some relic of the Nazi era. It actually outlived the Nazis. Can you believe that? While the Nazis expanded its scope and brutally persecuted gay men, the fact is this discriminatory law remained on the books in West Germany until 1994. Think about that for a second. In a supposedly modern democratic Germany, being gay was still considered a crime for decades after World War II. It wasn't until 1968 that East Germany abolished the law, and West Germany didn't follow suit until much later. This painful chapter in German history is a stark reminder that progress isn't always linear, and that even in democracies, prejudice and discrimination can persist for far too long. It wasn't until 2017 that Germany finally legalized same-sex marriage, a testament to the long and arduous fight for LGBTQ+ equality. So, there you have it, a quick trip through some of the key events and figures that have shaped German democracy, from the revolutions of 1848 to the fall of the Berlin Wall, from the struggles for women's suffrage to the fight for LGBTQ+ rights. We've seen how Germany's path to democracy has been anything but smooth or straightforward. And the quiz results, well, they're kind of a mixed bag. It's encouraging to see that some events, like the peaceful revolution, are still widely remembered. But the fact that so many people struggle to identify key figures or dates is a reminder that we can't take our knowledge of history or our democracy for granted. Remember, history isn't just about memorizing dates and names. It's about understanding the struggles and sacrifices that have brought us to where we are today. It's about learning from the past, both its triumphs and its failures, so that we can build a better future. And that, my friends, is why it's so important to keep asking questions, to keep learning, and to keep engaging with the messy, complex, and ever-evolving story of democracy. And that was the big quiz on German history and democracy. Would you have known the answers to all the questions? For more general knowledge and awareness stories like this, please like, share, and subscribe.